Hello, everyone. My name is Tamiko Mueller. My friends call me TC. Today, we are going to talk about food deserts. This is an important concept throughout the nation, however, more specifically for Southern Illinois. So what I would like to do, first of all, is to let you know that this is a joint venture with Jackson County Collaborative. So this is new, but this is a lot of individuals that are part of a non-for-profit organization. Jackson County Collaborative is also a non-for-profit organization that work with several other non-for-profit organizations here in Jackson County. We have come together with like minds to help the residents and the citizens of the Jackson County community. With that being said, this food desert, it affects others throughout the southern region of Southern Illinois. However, it affects those also in Jackson County too. So today we're going to talk to you about how we can prevent, prepare, and prosper through food deserts. So I was talking to a couple of people, and some individuals, when I asked, do you know what a food desert is? And quite a bit of people said they did not know. So in that regard, I like to share with you some information in reference to that. So according to Wikipedia, a food desert is an area that has limited access to affordable and nutritious foods, such as fruits and vegetables, in contrast with an area with higher access to supermarkets or vegetable shops and fresh food products, which is also called a food oasis. So desert is the lack of fresh food, and then our produce. And then food oasis is where it's multiple places where you can get fresh foods, such as fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. I also researched a food empowerment project, FEP, and it says that it recognizes the problem with the term food desert, defined as the USDA as mostly being about proximity to food providers rather than considering other factors such as racism, cost of living, people being poor and cash poor, cultural appropriateness of available foods, and the ability of people to grow their own foods. A lot of times when we think about food deserts, is if a person is close to supermarkets or if it's within a certain area. But as defined by the USDA, is within a 1 mile distance or even a half a mile. So a lot of times people don't have car access to drive or walk, depending on what's going on. And we will talk about several of those instances, even young children, with our group of panelists. And our panelists this evening, we have Mr. Abdul Haq, Mrs. Kate Heist, Mrs. Alva Lindell, and Mrs. Jennifer Paulson, and Mrs. Chastity Mays. And they will talk about, in each of their perspective, how they have come across individuals that have experienced life with the food desert here in Southern Illinois. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panelists, and we'll start out with Mr. Abdul Haq. Thank you. Mr. Haq, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tamika. My name is Abdul Haq. I'm with the Addicts Community Service Board, a 52-year-old agency that's been working in Carbondale, especially with low-income and marginalized communities. When they think of a food desert, Tamika gave you a classical definition of a food desert. And, when we think of a desert, we usually think of the lack of water, and things are hard, as opposed to hard to purchase, things are also hard to grow in the desert. And so from a standpoint of how we've looked at it, we had to look at it from two points. One, the physical definition of food desert that was given, and then the second definition for us has been also the eating habits of individuals who may be not only a distance from supermarkets, but also maybe living close to a supermarket, but because of their eating habits and the way they're orientated toward food in their thinking, they also have a food desert in their thinking, meaning that they don't make sound decisions about how they eat, what to eat, when to eat. And unfortunately, food deserts are also tied to health disparities. That is a health disparity, particularly related to diabetes, obesity, liver heart attacks, which disproportionately are impacted more by minorities than other sectors of the population, particularly African Americans, Hispanics. And you saw that demonstrated during the height of COVID, that most of the people ended up in hospitals and died were people who had preconditions such as I just described, and obesity and health disparities was one of the main causes that ended up with people being hospitalized. So anytime we approach this, we have to approach it that even when their fresh fruits and vegetables are available, still, if you go to the grocery store and look at and sit there and watch people buying their groceries, you'll see a predominance of purchase of canned goods. And you'll see a lot of fresh meat, but you won't see a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. You'll see fruits more so in the cart, but you won't see a lot of vegetables. So that means that we have to also do an education to people about diet, about fresh foods, and how fresh foods empowers our bodies and how it also affects our thinking. And this is also harmed by the fact that the commercialization of fast foods, really attacks people's diets and people's psychology and thinking about food, which can make a food desert even worse, because people still spend a lot of time going through fast foods such as McDonald's, Burger King, all of those that we know. And so they're still eating foods and high fats and other kind of things that contribute to the disparities in their health. So one of the things we have done over the years is try to address these two things. And one of the populations that are severely impacted by that, of course, is families, and particularly the children of families, and it becomes cyclical that what each generation is eating is taking us further and away from fresh foods, so that it becomes now systemic. And it's also a product of racism. It's systemic, it's part of racism, and it perpetuates itself over and over again. And when you have such strong messages of McDonald's and all the commercialization on TV and cartoons and cereal sellers and all those with high sugar content, that exasperates the problem and perpetuates a continuation of the health disparities that are caused by not being educated and not having a culture that promotes healthy eating and particularly consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. We also know that so children are impacted more because they eat what their families give them. Their habits for eating is based on what their families feed them. And also, in some instances, we have a history where children were not getting proper meals, and there's studies that clearly identified that if children are not eating well, they also do not perform in school well. My first experience, just a little quick history, that's my first experience with children being fed before school was with the Black Panther Party back in the late 60s, early 70s, particularly, where they had the first breakfast program, which was designed to give children a good breakfast before they went to school. That's instituted now in the school system, where you have both free lunch and free breakfast. And the ADDIC's programs have been to fill in the gaps. And one of the gaps we fill in is the after-school meal program, where we have feed children after school, where there is sometimes a distance between 12 o'clock lunch and when they finally get to dinner. But also what they eat in between those times are snack foods, junk food. So ADDIC's has tried to fill in by offering tutorial programs after school, in addition to offering supper and snack with foods have to be, all the foods we serve have to be approved by the Illinois State Board of Education Food and Nutrition Program, portion sizes and the kind of food that we can serve. So that's one of the things we do. In addition, we offer the summer program, which also continues to fill in that gap over the summer when children are out of school. We serve both supper and breakfast and lunch, and on occasion, depending on the program, we only can serve 2 meals a day. The other thing that Tamiko mentioned was access to fresh foods. We have to really work on developing the community gardens. And the community gardens suffer from the same thing we talk about in the grocery store, is that we can produce the community gardens, and we are doing that well. Kate would talk about things they're doing at the Red Hen and what we're doing at our Addis Community Gardens, and there are other art gardens that are coming up in the community, is to give access for marginalized and disadvantaged communities access to fresh vegetables in particular. But we have to also start working on intergenerational. That is, most of, my father grew vegetables in the backyard, and most of the seniors in our community, all of them have had some experience with gardening, and they still love fresh vegetables. And they're some of the biggest consumers of our gardens is the elderly. And we got to find a way to get the grandmothers and the grandfathers into working with their children, with their daughters and their sons and their children, their grandchildren, about helping us in this effort to get more fresh fruits and vegetables. And lastly is that we have a farmer's market, but the cost of going to a farmer's market and the distance many times outweighs opportunities for disadvantaged or marginalized populations economically participate in the market. So I think my time is up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hawk. You raised a lot of valuable points, and I think that's a great segue right into Ms. Kate talking about some of the items that we have here in our community with the gardens. Ms. Kate, would you like to share with us your thoughts, please?
Sure. My name is Kate Heist. I'm a member of Women for Change, Carbondale. And when we started, part of our mission statement was to beautify. So we started a garden over on East Larch Street with that in mind. And we began right out by planting vegetables and flowers. We ended up not working very well the first 2 years because we were beginners, but we had produce left over, and we decided to build a free produce stand. And we were sort of surprised to find out how quickly things moved off the produce stand. It is right up next to the road where you can drive up, see what's on the stand, jump out and get what you need. As the garden's grown, of course, we've had more to put onto that. So the surprise led us to talk more with other gardens in the area about the need for fresh produce. And as far as I know, the other gardens in the area are all attempting to grow produce that is grown in a sustainable way without a lot of insecticides and herbicides and things like that on it. I think that's very important as far as nutrition goes, because if you have a healthy biome in your soil, you have healthier plants that are more nutritious. So the Red Hen Garden is flourishing. We have several other gardens in the area. Of course, the Addicks Community Garden is a large one. I'd love to see it get big and big and big and big. It's got so much wonderful space and soil. There is a food forest on Birch Street, which is all the trees produce edible fruits. And that is located right behind the Irma C. Hayes Center on Birch Street. And contiguous with that and new is the Chestnut Street Garden. And the Chestnut Street Garden is going to be offering places where people can grow their own food. And they will also be offering advice, tools, water will be available. I think that getting people their own plots is a really important step that we can take as far as getting autonomous food supplies in the Carbondale area. We all are aware of the Washington Street Garden, which is sort of the most visible one that most people drive past. It is interesting in that they not only grow vegetables and flowers, but they also grow a lot of medicinal plants. And there is a great deal of knowledge of the gardeners in that area and how to use them, plus how to make teas, not necessarily medicinal teas, but how to make teas and tinctures and things like that. So that's the Washington Street Garden, Birch, Chestnut, Washington, Red Hen, Addicts. There is a community garden. The Union County Garden grows produce for the Union County Pantry, food pantry. There is a large garden in Cairo called the Care Grow. That's a GROW, Care Grow. And that is put on by Men of Power, Women of Strength, and I hope it's still there. I haven't really been in contact with them since they started before COVID hit. And also, I believe in Marion at the Boynton Street Center, there might be now a garden behind that. So these all are teaching gardens, and the purpose of them is to teach people how to grow things, as well as one of the things that all of the gardens want to do is they want to teach people how to cook and use the produce. One of the ways that Women for Change does that is we have a yearly garden gala. Usually it is on the Red Hen site, where we give away free plants. We have someone there cooking on a grill fresh vegetables and fruits. So that, and they're amazing, so that people can learn, people that walk through the gala can learn and taste and maybe decide they want to try that themselves. This year, our garden gala is going to be on May 14th, and it's going to be at the Chestnut Street Garden, because we are helping them to try to get people to sign up for those plots. This is right across from the Chestnut Street housing. And we're hoping to get that those people will cross the street, come over because of the curiosity with all the Women for Change stuff, and they'll get signed up with Chestnut Street people for a plot and learn to grow their own. There's another thing coming up sooner where you can get free trees. That would be the Neighborhood Planting Project, and that takes place April 16th. You should probably go to their website, which is Libra Unschool, and I will put that in the chat, .org, and register for trees, whereas you can reserve some trees, or you can show up, and I'm not sure, besides that it's April 16th, what the time is. It might be an all-day thing. And they gave away over 1,000 trees last year. The Women for Change Garden Gala gave away over 1,000 plants. So with plants and trees, well, we'll probably have whatever trees they have left over at the event at the Chestnut Street Garden on the May 14th. And that takes place from 11 to 3. All of these gardens are great places if someone wants to learn about gardening, to come in and do that. Now, we have recently joined in, like 2 years ago, with the Carbondale Spring Food Autonomy Group, and they have been providing funds for items that the different gardens need. For us, they have bought us a shed, which we will be putting together soon, and that will hold our equipment like our lawnmower and our tiller, not to mention the shovels and stuff like that. They have provided us with labor that is actually paid labor. So we can have so many hours per week, have someone come in and work in our garden with our volunteers. And the point of that is so that the people that are receiving those stipends are also interested in learning gardening, and they have a hands-on place to do that, and they're getting some money. So it's like a really, really important thing that Food Autonomy Group is doing.
Thank you. I think Food Autonomy is doing great things for the Southern Illinois community. And thank you, Ms. Kate. You have all the information, especially with the information about the May 14th at Chestnut Street Garden for the cooking, and also for the April 16th. And we'll have that in the chat for all of you all that are interested in getting a free tree and tasting some really good and delicious produce, vegetables. We have Miss Alva Liddell with us, and she's going to share with us about the program that we have here in Jackson County, and actually over the Southern Illinois region. And so she'll explain more about that. Miss Alva, I think you're muted.
Good afternoon. My name is Alva Liddell, and I work as a community health worker through the NAACP. And what we do is, normally we work with patients or people who have been affected by COVID. If a person or someone in their household has had COVID, if they're needing food or cleaning supplies, we will go to the food banks, or we will go out and shop for food and cleaning supplies, drop the stuff off at the patient's or the client's doorstep. We don't have any physical contact with the person other than on the phone. We leave it on the doorstep. They can come out and pick it up. If they live in an area that's far away from us, we will Instacart it to them, but we have ran into instances where Instacart does not deliver to these people. I have driven as far away as to Valier, and I did that on Christmas Eve because this family did not have any food and I could not get it Instacarted to them. This grant is going to end in June. So once that happens, I'm not exactly sure what is going to happen to the people. We're still getting referrals from the community. And with these referrals from the community now, if we can put in a request to help them pay their rent, but if we don't have any money in the budget for rent, we offer to buy them food, and they could use those monies to go ahead and pay their rent with the money or pay other bills that they may have. One of the things that we have to learn to do is we have to teach people to cook rather than them buying the frozen processed foods. We also have to learn, we have to start teaching people how to can the food and to freeze the food so they will have food all through the winter months rather than just what they can have in the summer months. You know, frozen fruit is just as good as fresh fruit if you don't have the fresh fruit available. One of the things that I have mentioned before is that whenever my kids say to me, "Mom, what do you want for Mother's Day?" I always tell them, buy me a tree. My kids have purchased me a peach tree, an apple tree, and I have a cherry tree. And those trees are producing, and I've had them less than 5 years. You know, I make jelly every year. I freeze a lot of my fruit so they can go in smoothies and different things that we can have. That is my spiel. Any questions?
Thank you, Miss Alva. I have to say I've been influenced by, we will have all of the questions and answers towards the end. So if you do have any questions for Miss Alva Liddell, just please write those down and we'll have a chance to answer those with her. And very excited about the work that she's doing with the NAACP program. And I've been influenced by Miss Alva. I literally went out today and got a peach tree and also apple tree and cherry tree. So these are not just things we're talking about. These are tangible, doable things. And I went and bought them at Roll Key. The least expensive one was $29.99. And the most expensive one, which I splurged a little bit, was I think $55. So, but these are things that, you know, if you have a budget of $100, you potentially could get 2 or 3 trees, depending on what your choice is. So thank you so much, Ms. Alva, for that information. Next, we have a wonderful panelist with us, and it's Jennifer Paulson from FoodWorks, and she will share some really valuable information with us. So without further ado, Ms. Jennifer, please introduce yourself and tell us some great things about your organization and what you're doing here in Southern Illinois.
Thank you. So I am Jennifer Paulson. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called FoodWorks. We are based in Carbondale, and we serve the 23 southernmost counties of the state. FoodWorks' mission is to grow our local economies through sustainable agriculture and through food production. We all need to eat. If we're buying a little bit of our food from people around us in our communities, we are strengthening our local economies just through that. So we kind of approach this from 3 angles. The first is farmer training programs, and I'll go into that a little bit more. The second is that we grow market opportunities. We grow farmers markets, food hubs. We try to create creative ways for consumers and farmers to connect with each other. That's often one of the biggest hurdles in the industry. And then the third part of that is that we're working to create equitable access to healthy food, healthy, nutrient-dense, fresh food. And that really makes a difference. A lot of Southern Illinoisans are struggling to access quality, nutrient-dense foods. You know, there's a lot of calories out there at the big box stores, and they're cheap, but they don't feed our bodies well. They don't set us up for a lifetime of health. So one of the things that we do to try to increase equity is to help farmers markets across the region to be able to accept SNAP at the farmers market. There's quite a few administrative hurdles for those markets to do, so we help those market managers get through that process. And then we bring a program called Link Up Illinois, has what's called link match coupons. And essentially the way this works is that for every $1 a person spends of their SNAP at the farmer's market, they are matched $1 in link match coupons, which allow them to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. So it doubles their dollar at the farmer's market. It's unfortunate that farmers markets are often still a little bit more expensive than big box stores, and that makes a difference in a person's budget when they're, when they're struggling. But it also has to be balanced with what quality food you're getting. You know, if you're buying rubbery old carrots from a big box store or from a corner store that doesn't really specialize in fresh foods, it's going to be really hard to get yourself to eat those, your kids to eat those. I know I have 2 young kids, and when I started feeding them farmers market carrots, they started eating it up like candy. But when I bring them something from the grocery store, it has never worked that way. They kind of turn up their nose. So anyway, that's my personal experience. But it's a real issue. Food security is such a huge issue in Southern Illinois. Just to kind of put it in context, in January of 2022, in the lower 13 counties of our state, just 13 counties, there are 32,617 households receiving SNAP. That's households. That's not people, that's households. So it really lets you know there are a lot of people who are struggling to make that food budget work. So the SNAP and Link Match program is at multiple farmers markets in the area. We have summer farmers markets just starting out, so I'll put this information in the chat when I'm done. But just real quick, I want to say we've got, Hump Day Farmers Market on Wednesday afternoons. We've got the Carbondale Farmers Market on Saturday mornings. In Benton on Thursday afternoons, we have this program. And then in the wintertime, we have it at the Carbondale Community Farmers Market, which is held in the mall, University Mall, between December and March. So that's one really important thing that FoodWorks is trying to do. And I'll say that Link Up program is at 70 plus farmers markets across the state. So you can take those link match dollars and you can spend them at any of those farmers markets, not just the one where you started, where you got that money. Some other things that we do are on the farmer training side. One of those things is Farm Beginnings, the program to help bring new farmers into the industry, and not necessarily people who come from a farming background themselves. You know, we take an entrepreneurial approach and look to create businesses that are, or, you know, help people create businesses that are sustainable, both in the way they grow the food, but also in the business side, to understand marketing, budget, that kind of thing, so they can be a thriving food business. And we have farmers, you know, that are doing everything from honey to, you know, some traditional things like cattle and goats and soybeans, but also people who are growing gardens, market gardens to sell at farmers markets, people doing herbal medicine, and a lot of people doing what's called cottage foods. And I think it's really important for people to know that there's this classification of cottage foods. It's a license that you can get that allows you to produce food for sale from your own home kitchen. And this is non-hazardous food. So think like baked goods, jams, jellies, teas, that kind of thing. Not meat, not dairy, but it's a really great way to start a food business. And so a lot of people who might not think that they're a farmer actually would thrive in a business, a cottage foods business. So that's a program that we do every year. And then the other thing that we run is called the Farming Alliance. And this, the main activity of the Farming Alliance is it's a network of sustainable farmers, gardeners, community members who want to learn a little bit more about growing food. And one of the main activities we do is field days. And so that's once a month through the summer. We have a farm that will, various farms that will open their doors, give tours, and talk about some aspect of production. So we have the first one coming up in April, on Monday, April 11th. It's at Interwoven Permaculture Farm, which is in Polk County. And again, those are open to the public, and you know, we welcome people there. You don't have to necessarily identify yourself as a farmer to come to this. If you're interested in the topic, show up, meet other people who are interested too, and start to kind of build your community around food. You know, community around food is so important. Mr. Hawk talked about that a little bit, and I think our other panelists have touched on it too, that we need to build culture around food that is going to support our people, our communities, our health, our economies. And a big part of that is things like growing your own food or learning how to produce how to preserve some of your food. That's another common topic we do on field days, is just how do you preserve the harvest? What are all the different ways you can freeze that food or whatever? And I see I'm getting waved at, so I'll stop now. But I'm going to put my contact information in and information for those markets into the chat, and I would love to connect with anyone who is interested or has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. You are just a walking encyclopedia of information, and I really appreciate that, because when we're talking about food deserts and actually how to just prevent them and how to actually prepare and prosper, this is a key thing. I was reading some information, and it says healthier foods are generally more expensive than unhealthy foods, particularly in food deserts. For instance, while the overall price of fruits and vegetables in the U.S. increased by nearly 75% between 1989 and 2005, the price of fatty foods dropped by more than 26% during the same time. While such inflation has strained the food budgets of many families, regardless of their financial status, the higher cost of healthy foods often puts them entirely beyond the monetary means of many lower income people. Food is really big. So exactly what you were talking about, Jennifer, and being able to use the link card, SNAP, to help out using at the farmers market, that's so beneficial. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Miss Chastity to join us and to tell us about the farmers market. Her and her husband, Orland, have been very productive, and they actually do a lot of things in the community. Miss Chastity.
Hi, my name is Chastity Mays, and myself and Orland Mays, we have an urban farm. The name of it is Mustard Seed Sowers Farm. We've been doing that for over 8 years now. Orland actually started growing in our backyard, and then from there we bought a plot of land on our own on the northeast side of Carbondale. The address is 426 East Sycamore. And then from there he just started growing. So one of the things I want to point out about what he does on the urban farm plot is the way he grows food is called double digging. And that process allows you to grow the most food in the smallest amount of space. It's a really complicated process, but if you look it up, you'll find out what it's all about. He also has what is called raised beds. So those raised beds are just wood areas that are built up in order to grow the food. I think the importance of us buying this plot of land on the northeast side of Carbondale was to show people that you can grow your own food. Also that you can grow your own food organically. Orland doesn't use any machinery at all, no gas machinery. He also he does everything organic. There are some organic like sprays and organic things that you can use, but Orland doesn't use anything organic. He uses everything sustainable. So like he uses leaves to help keep weeds down. He uses interplanting, which is using flowers to grow the different types of food. I think just the representation of him being there, literally if you go during the season, every day you can see him working. I think that's just important for the neighborhood to see, for the children growing up. And he's been there for a while. Something else that we have is we have what's called a hoop house. So Orland grows food year round on that plot. So that's really nice. I do want to point out that hoop house was provided by a program called it's NRCS, it's National Resource Conservation. I don't know exactly what it is, but you go through the government basically and you get approved for this hoop house, and they pay to get you this hoop house. We also have another plot of land. It's behind University Mall in Carbondale, and it's on Hanselman Street. We are actually about to get another hoop house. So we'll have 2 hoop houses where we'll be able to grow food year round. And that's also going to be provided by the USDA NRCS program. Orland actually went through the Food Works program. I wanted to point that out. One of the things that the Food Works program, the Beginning Farmer Food Works program did for Orland was it brought that business mindset of farming. So what it did was it taught him like all of the accounting work, the social media, which is everything that I do. But we just learned so much from Food Works. It puts you in a place of being around other farmers, and just going to visit their farm and seeing what they do allows you to know that you can do it, and it just gives you different ideas. One of the things that I've watched along the way is when Orland started, he started with so many different farmers, and they were all kind of growing the same thing, right? Like everybody was growing tomatoes and cucumbers and greens. But then I watched all those farmers get their different type of niche. So we have Mike who grows mushrooms. We had another family who started out growing everything, and then they started doing chickens, and they were able to sell that at the farmer's market. And then Orland came with his niche, which turned out to be the herbal teas. So Orland has medicinal herbs and he has herbal teas. And the way that started, honestly, was he was already growing all those herbs, and we were kind of just sitting around having a conversation and said, why don't we try tea? And that's how it happened. And then it just kind of grew from there. I remember when he first started, he had like 9 different types, and he was like, oh, I'm going to stop here. Now he has like 21 different types of tea. So that's just something that, like, being the person who doesn't grow the food, that I've watched from the outside, and just watching all these farmers just grow these different types of foods in the area. For me, I wanted to point out that I think living in Carbondale is like super amazing because we have watched all of this wonderful things on the Northeast side happen. So we bought this plot of land. There was nothing there. We grew it up. We have this hoop house. And then Mr. Hawk brought his plot, which is so huge. And like Kate was saying, it's going to be so wonderful to see that whole plot have food on it just to provide for the Northeast side. And then seeing the different gardens pop up. So seeing Larch Street, which is right around the corner from Orland's plot, seeing Birch Street. And I mean, it's really like an amazing revolution that's happening for us to be able to provide this food. I'll be happy to see more younger children, like teens and the younger children, start to get involved. I'll also be happy just to see people growing. Like, I'm excited about Birch Street to see people have their own plot and just start growing food. It's so important. And I think also, like everybody else pointed out, like all 3 of my kids, I'm not going to tell you that they want to grow food, but if they had to, they could. So I think that's something that's really important too, is that like we have to teach them these important skills that's just going to help all of us thrive. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you so much, Mrs. Mays, in reference to talking about the children. The children are our future, and it's right now. We don't need to wait until they're older. We need to start talking about teaching them when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. Kids love to play in the dirt already. So this is just something that we can teach them while they're young. In fact, I was going to do a show and tell myself because I finally started planting some lettuce and I have my little seedlings growing right now. And it's all because I actually am in the class with Food Works for Farm Beginnings. And I would not have planted or did anything else. And I'm going to be a bee farmer as well. So these are all exciting things that are happening because the word is getting out about food deserts. And I'm planning extra so that I can give to the community as well. And these are all important things with all the farms you're hearing that's coming up so that we can help. Earlier, Miss Kate mentioned about the Care, Grow, and K-Row. They actually are considered a food desert here in Southern Illinois. They do not have a grocery store. So they are traveling, sometimes 20 minutes away to Cape or Kentucky to actually shop at a grocery store. A lot of times in rural areas, you'll see liquor stores and convenience stores, and they might say groceries, but it's not actual grocery stores. So I saw this and I thought it was really interesting. And this is just a picture of, kind of some convenience stores that you can see around certain communities, which are usually underserved communities. And I read this other article in this, and it's talking about obesity. A lot of times in food deserts, there's a lot of processed foods that are being eaten because they're not getting fresh fruits and vegetables. And it says that while unhealthy eating may be economically cheaper in a short term, the consequences of long-term constrained access to healthy food is one of the main reasons that ethnic, minority, and low-income populations suffer from statistically higher rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and also other diet-related conditions than the general population because the lack of fresh food and vegetables. And food insecurity is really big with that. Whatever the age, obesity puts people at a greater risk for serious, even fatal health disorders. So we can help out a lot just by eating healthier. Right now, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions and answers. We have about 15 minutes. If you like, you can put your questions to the question and answer box or into the chat box, and we can answer those. Or if you have your hand up, We'll give everyone about 2 to 3 minutes to ask the question and also answer it so that we can get everyone to be able to have their question or answer responded to. I see Mr. Hawk with his hand up. So Mr. Hawk, why don't you start us off, please?
Well, I just wanted to, first of all, I want to thank Gift of Love. Our first garden was in the fall of 2010, and Orland was our garden coordinator for the first 2 years. We actually had about 20 youth between the ages of 16 and 24. In Orland leadership, we were able to get 8 of those young people their master gardens training. In addition to that, we were also able to get 10 of them their food sanitation licenses. I only say that to say that, we can get young people involved. And those young people, they have certain challenges, but they also have some accomplishments that we didn't think they could do. So we just have to get out and try to recruit them and get them involved as early as middle school. We put a program before the city to try to develop service learning projects for middle school youth. We don't know if we'll get it or not, but we did put a proposal in for middle school youth. And in the summers, usually we have some youth 16 to 24 working in the gardens and working around the summer food program, working with kids. So I am a supporter and a fan of Orland and Gift of Love, and because of the work that we've done together over the years. And our garden started in the fall of 2010.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that was a great recognition of Mr. Orland Mays and Gift of Love and what they're giving back to the community. And that's certainly what it's about, giving back to the community. I see a hand up from Mr. Charlie Howe. Thank you so much for being on today. Mr. Charlie, can we, okay, there you go. You can speak now, please.
Yeah, I was wondering, several years ago, I got some vegetables from the Moss Garden, and a young man who frequently came to the neighborhood co-op used to farm there. And he has some really good ideas on how to keep the deer and raccoons from eating the food and everything, but I haven't seen him around for the past few years. Do you know where he is and whom I'm referring to? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charlie. Mr. Hawk, do you have any information in reference to that?
Yeah, he was our coordinator for 2 years at the garden, Addicts Moss Garden. He was there for 2 years. He's now back in Jamaica.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so that's where he's back. He moved back with his mother. But yeah, he was very helpful, and he did have a way to keep the deers out of the garden. That's a problem we face a lot because we're right across the street from the forestry program that they have, and so they just kind of wander over there in the early morning hours, and it's been a problem. We've got to fence up, but he did have a method, and I forgot the organic chemical he used to spread around the perimeters of the garden to keep the deer out. And yes, he was very, very helpful and very instrumental.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hogg, for that update. So I don't know if you all can see the chat, but Mr. Howe had put in here that we talked about, and this is something Miss Elva mentioned earlier when I was talking to her earlier this week, about how we can help prepare people. And she mentioned canning. And Mr. Howe put in a comment that Food Works help with that. So Miss Jennifer Paulson, can you talk a little bit about possibly having those classes to help and with canning, and then maybe Miss Alva can talk about how she's canned some of the fruit from her trees thereafter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, it's an issue for just about any gardener or you know, anyone who wants to save a little money by buying, you know, fruit or veggies in the height of summer when there's a lot of it, the price is down. You know, it's important to know how to preserve that. So we've done field days on all different kinds of methods for preserving the harvest, canning, you know, freezing, freeze drying things. There's a whole lot of ways, you know, even making like fruit leathers or something like that from that fresh produce, you know, just kind of looking for different ways to put that food up so it's there for later. And I want to say it's also really, you know, it's for the home gardener, it's for the consumer, but it's also for the farmer that, again, under that cottage foods law that I mentioned earlier, where you can produce food in your own kitchen for sale later, small farmers can do things like freeze blueberries in the summertime and sell them in the winter. You know, so they have an income stream throughout the year. That's really important. I mean, Southern Illinois, you can produce food year round, but you can't produce fruit year round necessarily. You know, so it's there's a whole lot that you can do. But again, it just kind of takes, usually I think, direct experience. So coming to an event where you can learn, taking a class, or just, you know, working with somebody in your community or in your church or somewhere, you know, find somebody who knows how to do that and ask them to show you. That is, you know, that kind of knowledge is amazing. And it used to be really common knowledge. It's not so common anymore. In the last few generations, a lot of people have forgotten how to do that. But it used to be second nature for a lot of people just to have a garden in their yard or the backyard or wherever they could find some space and to put that food up to help supplement their budget. So I'll stop in just a second. I want to say, when it comes to those field days that FoodWorks does, we always base what we do on what the community tells us that they want. You know, what kind of things are you wanting to learn? What challenges are you facing? That kind of thing. So if there's something like that you want to know, best way is probably just to send an email. But, you know, we also do surveys and things like that. It's really based on community need. So
well, there's a need for canning classes. And for me, I guess I'm one of those generations that you talked about that really haven't gotten into it. Although in the Great Depression, that's what you did, you know, just to survive in the winter months and throughout the year, quite frankly. So I think that is so important. Also, Miss Alva, you do canning and you have trees that you utilize. Can you talk a little bit to that? A couple of minutes?
Yes, I do can, but I make more jelly than I do anything. I make cherry jelly, strawberry jelly, blackberry jelly, blueberry jelly, any type of fruit basically I can get my hands on. I take and make jelly and I end up giving most of it away, you know, and I have people constantly coming back saying, do you have more? So yes, I do. And okay. I freeze a lot of the fruit as well.
Oh, that's excellent. And that's exactly what Miss Paulson was talking about. And I didn't know that for blueberries, you can freeze them and then sell them later. So that's excellent information. If everyone can just look in your chat, we're getting kind of close to time. I know Mr. Hawk has his hand up and we'll get to him and then we'll start to close out here in a couple of minutes. Thank you, Miss Alva, for sharing. Mr. Hawk?
I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No worries.
I have to lower it.
Oh, I think you just raised it. You had it lower. So one of the things I do want to kind of say as far as closing remarks, that a lot of times we can learn things from just attending groups. So there's going to be a gala. And that's coming up really soon in May. So that's a great opportunity. If you did not get that information, please look at the chat. box, and you can get the date and time, and also for Jennifer Paulson's information for Food Works. I read this as far in Miss Kate, you have a question or you want to make a statement?
A comment for anyone that wants to learn how to garden. One of the best ways to learn is to go to a community garden, watch what they're doing, stop and chat. It doesn't have to be a long period of time. See what they're planting in at that time, and that is what you should be doing in your garden at that time. It's the easiest way to learn how to garden is to volunteer at a community garden.
What are some things that people can potentially start planting now if they were curious and just kind of wanted to get going?
All of the cold weather plants like peas, they are frost resistant up to a point unless it's a really, really hard frost. Mustard, collards, kale, cabbages. I'm sure there's more, but those are what we're trying to get in. We're actually planting carrot seeds as well now, and keeping them covered against frost. But yes, you should be planting some of these cold weather things now. But the easiest way again to learn is to see what your local community garden's doing and just copy them.
Yes. And what are days that they're out there if they wanted to come and see or talk with someone?
At Red Hen, we are in the garden on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 o'clock, and often before that. So if you contact through the Women for Change Facebook page or the website, we will get a hold of you and let you know if we're actually going to come earlier. I think that the Washington Street Garden is Saturday 2 to 4, Wednesday 10 to 2, and Tuesday 2 to 4. And I don't have hours for the other local gardens.
Okay. I think that's great. Just knowing that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then 10 a.m. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to sum this up. What can we do if we live in a food desert? So basically, if you recognize that you're living in a food desert, or if someone else lives in a food desert, if they don't have easy access to fresh food and vegetables, then you can start by helping those in your community understand what it means and talk to them about making a change. A lot of times getting a co-op in a community that doesn't have fresh produce, food and vegetables is a way to look at that. Discussing different options in your community, get with your leadership or just neighbors. You can start a neighborhood community garden. And it doesn't matter if it's on the northeast side of town, southwest side of town, in another city, Murfreesboro, DeSoto, wherever, start today. And also discussing such as growing your own food. You don't need a lot of space. I was researching, and this is a 0 acreage lot. So they're just planting right on top of the rooftop. You can start out with just a little bit of land, plant a tomato plant, some onions, something really, really simple. It doesn't take a lot of space. So you don't have to have a big farm. You can start small with just a little area and you can grow, or you can partner with some friends. Another thing is working with your local retailers to sell healthy foods or vegan foods, talking to the co-op, talking to different grocery stores around so that they can get more produce in. And then another thing is it's also important to bring your ideas and concerns to policymakers, your city council members, your county, your state legislators. If you aren't getting the results that you feel you need, you can go ahead and talk to someone in the political arena to help you. But really, it just takes one person and can make a big difference. And so I want to say thank you so much to all of the panelists that we've had. And I really appreciate your time this evening. It's been such great information and talking about how to prevent food deserts. And also we're seeing great things, hopefully soon with even Cairo getting a store there, a grocery store, co-op, so that they don't have to drive miles away. Keep in mind, a food desert can be if you are not having anything fresh fruit or produce within a 1 mile radius. So it can be a location in a community if they're far away from fresh produce. We're Southern Illinois, rural areas. So that's something that, it doesn't have to be an urban area. It doesn't take very much to be considered a food desert. So stay knowledgeable. And we're just very grateful for you all being on this evening. I hope this was very informative. And this is also the first presentation, hopefully, of many for Jackson County Collaborative. We're a group of non-for-profit organizations, and we're bringing community awareness. We're going to be talking about things like gun violence. We're going to be talking about things where we can bring economic growth to the community. And there's various other things, but we are concerned citizens here in Jackson County, and we want to do well for the citizens and those that live within our community. So thank you again.